How do I know that I'm ready to sign up for a marathon or a half marathon?
Okay. So I think it is okay to mix walk run, and a lot of people they do it in longer events also. Even in marathons, you'll see some people they mix their walk run. It's actually a very good strategy. The funny thing is that when you're doing your first half, you don't even have to run the distance. You don't have to do a 21.1 in your practice. You're good with a 16 to 18 kilometers as well. So you don't have to push it too much in the training for you to do the event. So this is how we do. So the long run, say 12, 14, 16, come back down to a 10 or a 12. And then again, you can do a 16 and an 18. So that's how my long runs are going to look.
How important is sleep? How do I manage my sleep? If you can briefly talk about that.
So when your heart is beating, between beat 1 to beat 2, the time, the seconds, milliseconds will change, right? So the higher the HRV is actually good for you. Even when I was studying for the Ironman, I was like, oh, there's so many people doing it, so many women doing it, I can do it. So I should attempt it.
What are some of the most common race day disasters and how to avoid them?
So one is starting too fast. Just don't get carried away with the crowd. Stick to your pace, stick to your strategy. You know what you've done. So just don't change the plan in the last minute. Don't try anything new, no new shoes. Practice whatever you want to on the race day. It's very, very important. When we're talking about injury prevention, then again, in the end, your nutrition, hydration, sleep. So these are all the factors.
Last 2 weeks or 10 days or 7 days is called the taper week. What is a taper week?
So periods, I think that is one thing where that should we run during our periods? Is it safe to run? It is safe to run. I do it. All the athletes do it. There's no option, right? You have to train your body. So how I tackle this is
Shivangi, welcome to the podcast again.
Thank you. It's good to be back. And I think I've just seen the growth of your podcast. So, it feels good to come back.
Thank you so much. You've been a part of it, a very important part of it. Today, I want to talk about how can somebody watch this podcast, which is an hour or so long, and prepare a marathon training or a half marathon training plan for themselves for free, right? So my first question would be, how do I know that I'm ready to sign up for a marathon or a half marathon?
Okay. So I think a few things to, start from is that there are so many events happening now. So we need to get the distances. Like there's a 5K event, 10K, 21.1 will be the half marathon, then 42.2 will be the full. And then we have the other league, which is like 50 plus 100, 160. So there's no end. So coming back to the question, when you are ready is when you actually make up your mind. So I strongly believe that whoever has decided they want to do a half marathon, it's achievable. Of course, there needs to be planning and there needs to be a structure. But if you make up your mind, you want to achieve the goal, you can do it. So when I am coaching people or when I started my journey, the first idea was to actually see if I'm able to say, walk, jog, mixing both for like 30 minutes. That's the most basic thing we need to know. And also we need to understand that where the person is coming from. So if say you come to me today that, Shivangi, I want to train for my first 10 kilometers, I need to understand your background. So do you come from a sports background back in school? Generally, we see people taking up the sport. Now, of course, it's changing, but generally it's after 25, 30, we see more interest in running, running events. So I will sit with you, ask about your, history a bit about if you have a sports background, if you've played any sport back in school. Your current fitness activity, are you doing something like, maybe going to the gym, any other sport, cycling, going for walks regularly, your medical history, any injuries. So that gives me a base for me to understand if you are ready to, take up this challenge. So yeah, I think that is the first step if you're thinking of starting your journey.
Okay, say if I'm running regularly, 3 kilometers, right? Of course, you mentioned run and walk. So it means somebody who's an absolute beginner would do that, right? But if I'm running 5 to 6 kilometers every day, what is a good point for me to aim for from there? Like, is it a 10K or is it a 15 or a 21?
Yeah. So as I said that, if you're a beginner and you want to start your journey, if you're able to walk, run, mix of both. So we need to understand that when people, they want to start their running journey, they feel that, if they are going for an event, if they're unable to run the entire distance, they're not a runner. That's not the case. It is okay to mix walk run. A lot of people, they do it in longer events also. Even in marathons, you'll see some people, they mix their walk run. It's actually a very good strategy, right? Even in ultra distance, which is above 50 kilometers, above your marathon, people do that. So we need to take out this from the mindset that, if you're walking in an event, you're not a runner. That's totally fine. It's a strategy which a lot of people follow. So if you are able to do like a 5K distance, in like say 40 minutes, 45, even like, 60 minutes, that's a good start point for us to see that, okay, where you are. So it's for us to analyze where you are in terms of how much time you're taking, how much time you're on your feet. And then I generally feel it's a progression. From a 5, it's a good idea that you do a 10K event. Some people would want to jump from a 5 directly to a half. It totally depends, as I said, training age, history, but it's a good idea to slowly build up. So like if I've done a 5K, there are 2 ways for me to progress. So one idea will be that I improve my timing for 5K, right? So say if I'm doing it in 40 minutes right now or 30 minutes, does it excite me that can I run it in like 25 minutes? So, that is one way of progressing in the running journey. Second is, of course, distance. So like if I've done a 5K, can I do a 10K? I don't care how much time I'm taking, but can I do that distance? So, we need to first sit and figure out what excites you. Like, do you want to get faster, improve the timing for the distance, or you just want to keep growing in the distance? So, do a 10K, do a half, do a 42, and so on.
Hey, last time when we sat together, we talked a lot about building a base. Now, let's say I've decided that I'm going to run my first half marathon. Let's not jump the gun too much and say, okay, not a full marathon, but a half marathon. What does my training plan look like? And what is an ideal span for prep? Is it 16 weeks, 18 weeks?
Yeah.
Where do I start? What do I do? How does my week look like the next week, and so on?
Yeah. So as we discussed, this should be somewhere, people can make their own plan. So coming from, if you are somebody who can say run a comfortably 5 or 8 kilometers, assuming that that's your base when you think of signing up for a, half marathon or just a 10K, like if you've done a 10K, so you do have a decent running base, right? Doesn't matter how much time you're taking, but the distance, if you're able to cover. So from there, a good 12 to 16 week block is what we call is a actually good time for you to aim for a good half marathon. This, you don't have to like jump too fast in terms of the mileage or, the distances that you're doing. So it's a slow, gradual build up. So say you come and you decide, okay, I've done a 5K, you're excited, you want to do a half. If you have 14 or, a 16 week window, that's a good time for you to start building the base. Coming to how it's going to be is few things that, we need to first understand that how much time you can give. So for a half marathon, a good base will be to actually have 3 days of training in a week. That's minimum. If you can do 4 or 5, great. But 3 days is good so that this is running specific, right? With that, if you can add like 1 or 2 days of strength training, great. Some people, they want to do cross training like cycling or other sports, you can add that. But 3 days running focused is a good start point for you if you're doing a half marathon. As we go. Now, in terms of build, there has to be a progressive overload, which I'm sure a lot of people might have, searched online as well, which is very, very important. So say you've done a 10K today, for that matter, on a Sunday, the long run that we talk about, you should not just jump to a 18 on the, next Sunday. Yeah, it has to be a slow. A lot of people do that because they think you've done 10, oh, I want to do a half. The funny thing is that when you're doing your first half, you don't even have to run the distance. You don't have to do a 21.1 in your practice. You're good with a 16 to 18 kilometers as well. So you don't have to push it too much in the training for you to, do the event. So if for a beginner who just wants to do the event, it's okay if you're doing a 16 or an 18 long run as your maximum distance to do the half marathon. Coming back to your week, how it's going to look is, we generally do 3 days, as I said, that assuming that you have 3 days of, time available for running specific. So you do 1 day off in the beginning, like, you can do 2 days of easy work, 1 day of speed work. We'll come to that later. But this is what, is a general rule where you don't have to do every run fast. Because if you're doing that, you will buckle up. So it's a very common thing that, I did a 5K today in say 30 minutes. Tomorrow again, I want to do 30 or I want to do 29. Otherwise, I'm not progressing. That's not right. So you need to understand that there are different ways of running which will actually come together where you actually improve your performance or you achieve your goal. So if I am training for a half, my day or my week will look like that, 1 day easy. So easy is, it's very hard because everyone's body and everyone's at a different level. But a very easy rule is that it's a conversational pace. So say both of you are running together. If we can have a conversation, we're on point. But if I'm like, gasping, panting for breath, that means I'm going too fast. So it'll be, my easy pace might be 7, yours might be 6, we don't know. So this is a very good way.
Probably the other way around, but.
So this is a good way to, understand where you are when you're doing the easy. And it is important that you stick to easy as easy, because what happens is that is where the recovery will happen. So say if my easy pace is 6 and I'm trying to do all my runs at 5, the recovery will slow down, and then I won't be able to do the speed session which I planned as per, because body takes time to recover. So if it's a 3-day run program for me in a week, so I'll do one easy, one I'll do speed. Now speed can be fartlek sessions, it can be your interval sessions, it can be tempo sessions, and then I'll do another day of easy. So this way, slowly and gradually, I'll build up as I go. And then if you have another day, like, say somebody has 4 days, add another easy. So running too hard every time you go out is actually going to be counterproductive for you. So if you look at data of, runners who are like, doing marathons and all, there's 70 to 80% is actually easy running, and only 20 to 25% will be speed work, which sometimes when we are starting our journey, it becomes the other way around. So it's important that, we slowly build up.
Okay, so I want to break it down further. When you say easy run, how long should I... So say for somebody who's running a 10K or an 8K, now I'm starting my half marathon journey. So for example, I am preparing for a half marathon. I have my race in the next 4 days, right? So for me, when I'm starting the prep, how does an easy run look like? So you said it has to be on a conversational pace, but for how long? Then an interval session, how long is the interval session? What does that look like? And then the next easy run, and then the long run.
Okay. So we'll talk about now coming to each of the runs that I talked about. So let's just focus on 4 things right now. So, there is this long run. Easy and long can sometimes be confused with, because both are supposed to be, conversational based. So you've got a long run which generally people do on the weekends. So, that is how you said you've done a 10K. So the progression will be say 12, 14, 16, 18, right? Now say you have that 12-week window with you before your event. So what generally is a good idea is that we do a 3-week or 2-week of up. So say for example from 10, this is I'm talking the long run, say the weekend long runs. So I progress to a 12, a 14, maybe a 16, and then I come back down. So it's like you build up, and the 3rd week you come back down, right? So you're not just going up, up, up. You give your body some rest. This is in everything in fitness. Like you're talking about strength training also, we go up and then we come down. We go up, we come down, right? So this is how we do. So the long run, say, 12, 14, 16, come back down to a 10 or a 12. And then again, you can do a 16 and an 18. So that's how my long runs are going to look. Coming back to your speed sessions, different ways of doing it. Some are doing interval sessions, fartlek. So it's a good way of mixing. Now, fartlek generally is like, there is no pace that we generally prescribe. It's like 2 minutes fast, 1 minute slow, 2 fast. Like, it's like a speed play. People talk about that.
Like a rate of perceived effort.
So RP, is a different thing. Like rate of perceived effort is actually a good term that you've bought, because that should be used by all of us, right? So say if I am a coach and I'm giving you a 10 kilometer that, go on an easy pace, but I say that, okay, run, your easy pace has been for the last 3 weeks a 6:30, run at 6:30 only. Now, if the coach is telling you to do it, you would want to stick to a 6:30, right? But that day, say, for example, the weather was hot, or, you didn't have a good sleep, whatever, you felt that 6:30 is also challenging, but you're pushing your body to it, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, the RPE scale, you're feeling like a 8 or a 9. So a good idea for you is to take a step back. Come down, right? Easy runs are not supposed to be a 9 challenging, right? So that's why the RPE scale that you talked about is actually a good way of us to, see where you are in terms of your fitness. So there are times, say, I wake up very fresh and all, I go for a run. So I had a 32K, for example, I was training for a marathon. 32 generally became very comfortable for me, but for that day specifically, the pace which I would generally run on would be like a 5:55, 6. It was very challenging for me. I was at the 20th kilometer feeling like it's not going to happen, right? So 2 ways I could have just kept, on sticking to the pace. But what I decided was slow down. It's okay. I just get the distance because I didn't want to push it so much. So the RPE scale will come into picture here. Now, in terms of distance, so we talked about the long run progression where, it can be a 2 kilometers plus, depending on the time you have. It can also be 1 kilometer each week as well, right? But if you're talking about the 12-week window, then you've got the easy runs, which are called generally absorption runs as well. There generally we don't give any pace for that. You just go out for a run. It's about just getting the blood flowing, adding a bit of distance, adding a bit of kilometers. So again, conversational pace. You don't have to worry about heart rate and those things. Just go out, get in your body moving. Then coming to the speed work. Now, speed it's a very big, spectrum there. As I said, there can be fartlek, there can be tempo sessions, there can be interval sessions. Now, depending on where you are, like if you're a beginner, you will benefit with even adding a bit of speed work. You don't have to be very, very specific, right? So say if you're just starting your journey, adding fartlek sessions where it's like, running 2 minutes fast, 1 minute slow, 2 minutes fast, 1 minute slow, or even not running slow. So you can do like 2 minutes of fast running, 1 minute of walking, 2 minutes of fast, 1 minute of walking, right? So you are like going up and down in terms of pace can actually help you improve your speed.
Yeah.
Intervals generally would be like, say 400 meters of running with like say 90 seconds static rest recovery. So there are various workouts which can be, put in this. So I'm just talking about a few sessions generally which people do. So it's like 2 kilometers of warm up, right? And then we tell you that, okay, you run 400 meters fast and take 90 seconds static. So you're standing for 90 seconds, right? Into 5 intervals like that. Then again, you do an easy cool down of like 2K. So generally that's how your speed intervals will look. Now that can vary. It can go up to 800 meters, 1.6 kilometers. Like, it totally depends on where you are in terms of your fitness and what your goal is. So that is like, your fartlek sessions and that's your interval sessions. Now, tempo, slightly on the advanced side where, people are, say, aiming for some specific time. That's where it's a good idea to add those tempo sessions. So tempo is your speed, which is, say, your race pace. Again, I said it's for slightly intermediate to advanced level. So if your race pace is, say, 6 per kilometer, tempo race would be 5 to 10 seconds faster than that. Right? So we add those tempo sessions when we are aiming for specific time. So say you've done your first half marathon, you're like, I've done it in like 2 hours, 30 minutes. Now I want to progress and do it in like 2 hours, 15. So that's when this tempo session can actually help us because then we are pushing your body to run faster than your race pace. Of course, it's never going to be a 21 kilometer, right? It can be like a 8K tempo or 10K tempo or 12K tempo pace so that you actually know how it is to run faster than your race pace and then you're able to push it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes me think, why are these sessions important? Like, what are they actually doing in my body?
Yeah.
Like chemically or at the cellular level, what is changing and what are they doing in my body?
So here we have to understand that before even we jump into these sessions, it's about having a strong base, which we talked about in our last conversation as well. So if say you're somebody who's just starting the journey, don't jump into these sessions just for the sake. Like have a base where you're able to actually run for like 5K, 6K comfortably and then only add the speed work. It looks fun. It is super interesting to do these sessions, but do you need it is the question, right? A lot of coaches, a lot of runners actually just run most of it, as I said, 90%, 80% only easy. So that's like their aerobic base, that engine that we talk about. So once you have those things, these are the layers that will help you get better, right? So again, coming back to what the systems, so like, just talking in the running, system. So the aerobic system that we talked about, running is not a very power-based sport. Like, if you compare it to say, sprinting.
Yeah.
2 different things altogether, right? A sprinter will generally use the fast twitch muscles more. Here it's slow twitch. Like, these are the muscle fibers we are talking about. And that's why when you look at a runner and a sprinter, you see the body is entirely different.
Usain Bolt versus what's his name? The Kenyan
Kipchoge.
Kipchoge.
It's complete 2 different things. Running sport is the same. That's why we need to understand that, why we need to have these spectrums. So say if I were to train like, somebody who's going for a 400 meter, they will of course do the easy runs, but it's not going to be like running 30 kilometers, right? I'm talking in general, like their intervals will be like, going like 30 seconds fast and those kind of things. So here now, even though we are not a very power-based sport, we need to have that speed. So the fast sessions are actually training you to be able to hold that fast pace for that longer duration. So the slow runs, we can talk about the pillar. So it's building the base. The structure is the slow runs that we're talking about. And now the other, the other buildings on top is the speed work.
So, the beautification, you can say.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, if you're somebody who wants to say just, go the distance longer, focus on your speed. As like, very small part, focus more on your aerobic base building.
Okay, right. So, just to add on to this, actually to ask another question related to this, when I'm talking about running intervals or thresholds sessions or say tempo sessions, like what's changing in my body? how is it getting better? Like, how is it getting faster?
So see, it is, if we talk in layman terms, it is that you're able to hold the faster paces for longer, right? And of course, in terms of physiology, if we talk about your lactate threshold that is going up, right? Your base building, like we talk about the zones, you're able to stay in the zones for longer. Now, people do train based on their HR base, which is a completely different way of training, like, zone 1, zone 2, 3, zone 4, zone 5.
I will talk about that.
Right? But that's a completely different way of training versus what we do, right? So that is what. So, you are able to stay in the zones longer. Your, your muscle fibers are getting stronger. Your lactic threshold is improving. So all that needs to come together for you in a play for you to be a better runner. So in short, your running economy is getting better. Now, I'll give an example where, if you talk about the HR based training. So if for listeners, it is that, you do all the runs based on your heart rate zone. So, generally 5 zones, they prefer that you're staying in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 for the longest and very less time in the other zones. So that can completely change the paces as well, right? So because I like to experiment, I for maybe 4-5 months did this zone based training, HR zone based training. And to have accurate results, you actually wear like a band as well, the HR strap band, which people might have seen, which you connect to your watch. So my easy pace would be 6:15 when I was doing my runs, but to be in the zone, I had to come down to 7:15, 7:20 so that I'm in the HR, base zone. So for me personally, it didn't work out very well because I had to change it, and I made a mistake of switching the training during my season. So season is when I had events coming up. This could have been better if I tried to change during my off season when I had like 3-4 months of, changing the way I'm training. But I did that, during. So it didn't work out well. I got injured because I was trying to run very slow.
Oh.
So, that can change the way you are. So, everyone has a very natural stride, right? So I was actually, because I had to slow down so much, I was changing my stride. My, stride length was going down. My cadence was changing, all that. So in the end, I was also spending more time on the feet, right? So say to do 30 kilometers, if it took me X time, of course, I was slowing down. So I was spending more time on the feet. So, there are those changes we need to understand when we are trying to focus on training.
Wow, that's very important.
So because I was changing the way I was running, slowing down, pulling myself back, I did, end up getting injured. And then I thought, as of now, I probably want to stick to my, old methods of training.
One would think usually that if you run faster, you're more likely to get injured. But this is like complete opposite.
Yeah, I mean, that was something very interesting. And then I did sit with my coach and my physio and we discussed that, how stride and those things can, make such a big difference. So that was my personal experience. There are people who run HR based, which is great. Even I will till now look at my heart rate. But of course, it's not very accurate as I'm not using my, bands. The watches have, of course, become way better. You can, but then it will not give you the data which you're looking at. So I will check my heart rate. I will check that, say if I'm doing an easy run, is there a sudden spike? I'll be worried about those things that, suddenly it's going up and down in an easy run. If that's happening, then I will, think what's going wrong. But otherwise, I generally will look at the paces and how I'm running by the field.
So one other thing that I've heard and read a lot about is you spoke about briefly about progressive overload. So generally increasing your mileage by 10% is a good estimate.
Yes.
When you're training.
Yeah.
Is that something?
Yes, that is something that, we follow. And actually that is the wise thing to do because when I also started, I didn't know how much should I do. So now talking about 10% rule, and now it is 2 things. One is weekly 10% increase and one is also the long run 10% increase. Now for that matter, say if you're training for a half marathon, a first half marathon where your goal is to finish strong. So maintaining a mileage of 30 to 40 kilometers weekly, once, you build the base is a good idea. Now, if I say I'm running 40 kilometers, suddenly if I do a 60, that's a lot of load on my body. So this is a good general, rule for people to follow for beginners, intermediate. We're not talking pro athletes because they function differently, right? But we're talking about, people who want to just experience the sport, get better at it, right? So if I am making a plan or if you want to make your own plan, what you should see is that, okay, I've done 30 kilometers this week. I should not jump to a 50. Maybe do a 34, 35, right? Also, when you're doing the long run, now how you can divide it is that total mileage for the next week is 35, for example. So my long run, if I did a 10, don't do a 15, do a 12. So, you balance it out like that. So slowly you are building up both. And I said that, a good idea will be that after 3 weeks of loading or increasing the intensity, come down. No, come down, not zero suddenly. Like say you reached a long run of your weekly managed to say 40, come down to a 25 or a 30, not like a 10 directly, right? So you were like going up and then a little bit of recovery and then you pick it up from there. So this is a good rule, and 10% rule is something that everyone follows and I think should follow as well.
So let's call this a deload week.
Yes, correct.
Right? When we going from deload week to the normal week or the loading week again, the 10% increase would be from the previous week, right?
That's correct.
So if I did 40, I went to 25, and now I do 44 or 45.
Correct. So you then, it's like you go, the graph then comes down, but it doesn't come down to the first week. You then can pick it up from there. And if you're doing like a 12-week block, after say 2 deload weeks anyway, you will be at your peak. And then, you will taper down, which we'll talk about as we go.
Yes.
Right? So, it's important that, you're doing this and not just pushing. And it's okay. Like, for example, like, last week I could not manage my runs as planned. I had a niggle. I didn't want to run. So now, for example, 1 week was washed out, right? So say I had like, planned like a 22-kilometer long run that weekend. I could not do it. Will I do a 24, which I planned for this weekend? No, it's okay. It's part of life. It's part of training. You may not be able to do it. Things happen. So then again, you just have to plan it again. So like now I'm thinking instead of a 24, which was planned for this weekend, I might do a 16 or an 18. And then I will then again change the plan accordingly. Right? So it's okay. Like people do miss and then they freak out. They're like, and what they'll do is like if they've missed 3 runs, this week they'll add 2 more runs to cover up. Don't do it. It's okay. Like that week is washed out. It could be medical, could be other things. Start from, say whatever you can do max. No need to keep adding those mileages for the last week and trying to make it up this week.
Okay. Great. So now we have a basic structure, a weekly structure of 3 running workouts.
Yes.
Starting off with a slow run, then an interval or a fast or a tempo or whatever. And you can look it up on the internet. And then we have a long run. And if we have a 4th day, then we add another
easy run
in between, right?
Yes.
Another pillar that I find that has been very important for my training is sleep.
Yes.
Right? If I am not sleeping well the previous night, the next morning my HR is all over the place and, I'm not able to run as efficiently as I would otherwise. How important is sleep? How do I manage my sleep? If you can briefly talk about that.
So there's no question asked, that's actually the best recovery. So if you're not sleeping, and this is something that, a lot of coaches are also trying to communicate, if you're not sleeping well, you can invest X amount of money for these recovery boots and, all other, which have their place. But if you're not doing the base, if you don't have the base, as we talked about aerobic base, all these things are not going to help you, right? So your nutrition, sleep are actually very, very important. Now, coming back to sleep, there is about difference. Like people talk about 7 hours, 9 hours, whatever. It depends. But of course, a good thumb rule will be 6+ hours, sometimes 8 hours as well. So it is very subjective, but it will play a big role. All your recovery, or I would say all the progress, is happening during your sleep. So it is very important. Unfortunately, because, the life, and of course, all the runners are juggling between a lot of things. We are not pro athletes. So, waking up early to get in the long runs and those things. So you have to try that, say like Sundays, if you're waking up at 4 o'clock for a long run, try to maybe sleep early. If you cannot, try to come back in the afternoon and catch up on sleep. So it will play a big role. A lot of injuries are happening because people are not sleeping enough, not sleeping well. And duration, of course, is important, but your quality is the most important thing, right? So I do track my sleep. I have seen the changes in my HR and other things like, performance, if you're talking about. So there was a block where I was unable to handle the paces for my training sessions. Now, of course, there were other factors, but sleep was another big factor. I was not getting proper sleep, could not sleep on time, a lot of stress or whatever. So I could see that I'm unable to do the sessions as planned. My heart rate is, of course, going up. And then I could see the results in the event as well. So yeah, I think that is one thing. If you're talking about training, we need to talk about sleep as well.
Sleep is another podcast though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so vital. It's so important. And now people have been talking about it so much more.
Yeah.
One hack, and this is me digressing as usual from the topic, is that I have found that works really well for me is on the days, because life is happening around us and in between we are running.
Yes.
So that's the case with most people. Not everybody is an athlete, so that's not our life really. When I'm doing my runs and you're in the middle of your training week, you feel tired because you have to work and you have other responsibilities as well. And you feel like even if you've slept for 7-8 hours, somebody like me who needs good 8-9 hours of sleep, if I don't get that, I can't function. And one hack that I found that works really well for me is doing a yoga nidra. So, they also call it the non-sleep deep rest, NSDR, और योग निद्रा. हम लोग तो हजारों सालों से कर रहे हैं, इन लोग को भी पता चला है, तो ये लोग उसको NSDR बोलते हैं. So if you just turn it on YouTube, and there are 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minute sessions. You can just lie down with your eyes closed and do a yoga nidra session that calms settles your nervous system down, and it is magical how it works. You're not asleep. You're listening to the directions that the speaker is giving you, and after 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever session you're doing, you literally feel that you've slept for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that is a hack if
Yeah, and I think that thanks for sharing, because I think that's something that I also tried. So like how you said that we've been doing Kab Se, but I found something on Spotify. You can find on any of the music apps, and yeah, deep breathing as well helps. That's something that I never experienced, but it did help, and it actually also helped me with my resting heart rate, which we will touch base upon later. Other few hacks will be very difficult, but of course, everyone's talking about keep the phone away. One of the most challenging thing. Taking a hot water shower sometimes helps. And there are some supplements if people want to take, but yeah, in the end, you have to. It's called maintain a good sleep hygiene. You have to do it if you really want to perform well. That's something that's non-negotiable. If you want to improve your performance, focus on recovery, not get injured. So that's something that we need to focus on.
What are the 3 things that have helped you improve your sleep?
So one will be, I do try not to use my phone after like 9:45, 10. I try to keep it away. But of course, there are times when, that doesn't happen. That's one. I do eat my dinner by 7:30. I prefer not to eat anything after. Even if I'm going out, I will generally eat a little bit and then go. Of course, see, as you said, we're not full-time athletes. There are days when you go. So, that is something that, I eat early before and then I sleep. And then, another thing was I started taking supplements. So, like I take magnesium, especially during my peak training. So that has also helped me improve.
So yeah, also with the recovery and sleep.
So like these things, and then of course the main will be that try to go to bed at the same time. So these are very basic, which is actually out there, but actually very hard to follow. Like
also like not consume caffeine later in the day.
And you can say that I mean caffeine is something that I am trying to change. So yeah, one another thing was that I would drink coffee earlier, maybe 10 years back. 9:30, 10 in the night, and I could fall asleep.
Right.
Now, I don't know if it's the mental thing that people have talked about that, you don't fall asleep. But now, even after 5, if I'm having coffee, so I generally now have my last coffee at about 3 to 4, because they say that once you consume coffee, it will be in your system for a good 6 to 12 hours. It's a big window. But yeah, 6 hours is something that they say. So a good idea will be to, have the last cup by like 2, 3, which I'm now trying to change, and which has, impacted my sleep quite a lot in a good way.
I agree. I miss those days when you could have cold coffee.
Cold coffee at 9:30 is sleep.
Yeah. Those were the days, but yeah, I guess.
So that's changed quite a lot.
But I also think that some people can actually still do it. Like my brother, he's older than me, and he can still drink coffee black at 10 p.m. and be asleep by whatever 12 to
I think
whatever
that's,
1.
I used to think the same that, is it because I've read so much about it, or what is it?
I think it depends on body to body. There are like, there are genes that can manage this, and there are genes that, make it not happen.
Unfortunately, it doesn't.
We don't have those genes probably. Okay. So sleep is very important. We've talked about that. Now I want to talk about one of the most important things, that is heart rate. So you talked about, I want to talk about from resting heart rate to zones in the training zones, to heart rate variability, HRV. Tell me about this world.
Okay. So before we start about this, it's important to understand that the kind of training, as I said, HR training is different versus, generally what we do pace-based. they, of course, it's all connected, but we can't, say, I shared my experience about where I wanted to do HR based training. It will change your paces and everything quite a lot. So I'm just talking in general about heart rate. Big factor is your resting heart rate. So resting heart rate is something that, generally you can check in the morning. If people are not wearing smartwatch, people can just, put their finger without getting up, like while they're, in the bed. And it's just not just for athletes, it's for general population as well. So the higher the resting heart rate, the more you need to work on improving your fitness. So generally, it's like, 60 plus is for generally people we see, which needs to come down under 60. For some athletes, it's actually sometimes around 40, 41 as well. It's crazy. So, and I've seen that in me when I'm very, into the training. If my sleep, everything is good, I'm also under 50. Like sometimes I will hit like a 45, 44 resting heart rate, which is like, everything is going well. Yeah. So, so like a lot of factors will impact this, like, your sleep, your stress level, day routine, food. So many factors will change your resting heart rate. And of course, like, if the training load is a lot, so that's a very good indicator to find out if you're actually overtraining as well, your resting heart rate as well. So, like, say on an average 7 to 8 days, my resting heart rate generally is like, say, 50. Suddenly it's now 64, 63. It could be that I have some maybe I have
Something not going
yeah,
well for you.
not going well, or I'm just pushing my body way too much, not sleeping enough. So that's your body telling you to maybe just take a step back for a bit, set this, and then get back into it. So your resting heart rate is actually a very good indicator of your fitness as well. And as you get better conditioned, as you get fitter, this will go down. So that's one thing. You can use your smartwatches to track it. There are other, variables which you can use it. Now coming to your zone. So as we talked about, there are 5 zones. Now, if you're doing HR based training, that way of training, you will be running in zones. So like, zone 1, zone 2, your paces will be different. Then you will not be very much concerned about if I'm running at a 630. It'll be if my heart rate is in the zone. So generally in that as well, same, like, easy runs, as I said, should be the maximum of your training. So like, 70 to 80%, you will be in zone 2, sometimes hitting zone 3, but that'll be your that low aerobic zone training, which is your engine. So you're making your engine or your pillar strong, and then you will spend some time in, like, zone 4, zone 5, right? So like, those intervals will be on in your zone 4, zone 5. Fartlek will be, your tempo sessions will generally be in zone 4, zone 5. So that's how you can differentiate. HRV, again, something that's now talked a lot about and is very, very important. So the heart rate variability is when your heart is beating. So say between beat 1 to beat 2, the time, the seconds, milliseconds will change, right? So the higher the HRV is actually good for you.
Okay.
Right?
Break it down further.
Yeah.
So if I don't understand कि दो heart beat के बीच में क्या time होता है. So make it a little bit easier.
So मतलब layman, for me also it was very hard to understand, right? I don't come from a science background. I said, what is HRV? So like, of course I attended a session and that's where I understood. So basically आपकी heart rate 2 times if it's beating. So say, like, I'm not
beat
talking
1 and beat 2.
Beat 1, beat 2. I'm not talking the milliseconds. I'm talking, say, seconds right now, just for us to understand. So heart beat 1 to 2 was, say, 1 second. Say 2 to 3 is 1.3 second. Then again, it is like 1 second. So that variability is HRV. So the higher the better, because the higher it is, your body is able to react to stress in a good way, right? HRV plays a very, very big role in your training. If your HRV is low, that means your body is telling you that maybe you are pushing it too much, you're not recovered. You need to look at. So you can, of course, use apps. You can use your smartwatch, which will tell you. And it will differ for everybody. I cannot give you a number that your HRV is going to be this. So generally, your watches will show you like a 7 to 10 day period to give you the numbers. But generally, for a body, like, you should look at a data of 2 to 3 months to actually see what it is. But if you start tracking it, so we did a course recently, and the coach was telling us that there are some coaches at a very high level. So say, like, if I have a tempo session planned, and the coach says that your HRV is low, the coach will tell you, don't do the tempo session, do an easy run instead. It is that impactful. And after COVID, it's actually been considered quite a lot. So there are these top level athletes we are talking about, where they are training for Olympics and all, and they do check these factors regularly. So this was actually a case which we talked about in our class that time, that so she woke up looking strong, feeling strong, but the HRV was very low. So the coach actually said, you're not doing the speed session today. Change it. Do an easy one, that's fine. But once it's better, then only we'll do it. So it is that impactful. So you can consider, tracking it, which I have started doing it. And because, I do work with a lot of people, so I, track and see what is happening. I also see my training and I understand that how it can impact it.
What are the most common questions you come across when you're training clients? Say beginners.
Beginners is, again, as I said, that, they feel. So I want to actually break it for people who are starting. Don't compare. Like, when somebody comes up to me, they said that they want to do a 5K. And, they say that, oh, I'm doing it in like 50 minutes. It's fine. Like, you need to understand everyone is coming from a different, perspective, different journey, right? So the common questions will be, if I'm doing it in 50 minutes, am I a runner? You are a runner. As I said, even if you're walking the distance, that's one thing. So, that is one question. Second is, of course, a lot about heart rate. So people are now tracking their heart rates and stuff. Now, the one thing we need to understand is the heart rate, can vary a lot based on what happened a previous night as well. Now, for example, like, you had a bit of work stress, you did not drink water as much, or, there was a commute or something, that will impact your heart rate the next day in the morning. Right. So it's good to track it, as I said, but you can't be so focused on that. And then, so that is something that I talk to my clients as well, that it's great that you are tracking these.
You can't be obsessed with it.
Yes. So as we discussed, we are not full-time athletes. Like, even though I am training for my MS, I do have a job. I do have another life, so I cannot be like a pro athlete, which there is a big of confusion here. So a lot of people, they'll come, oh, I saw this, some top runners session on Instagram and I want to do that. I've said, we can't do it. Like, we can attempt it later, but not at this stage. It's such a, advanced session for you to try right now. And, so there's a lot of information out there. It's very important for us to understand. So that's one. A lot of questions come around pacing, how much distance should they do, which we talked about, that how you should increase the load. Shoes is another factor that, people talk about a lot.
We'll talk about
nutrition. So, there's a lot of questions that are thrown, but for beginners, generally, it is this, that, one thing that I tell when they start is that you need to understand we're not sprinters. So when people are starting running, and you can see that in the parks as well, they'll do like a walk and suddenly they would want to like sprint from here to there and then they'll get tired. It's a long game. You need to slow down. Like, if you want to run from, say, distance A, that is like from A to B is 1 kilometer, you can't be sprinting like, like a 100-meter athlete. So you need to slow down, pace yourself, and that's when you'll be able to do it.
Yeah. Also one thing that I've realized is your comfortable and slow pace might be faster than somebody, and it may be slower than somebody as well. So when you see an older man, like when I'm running, a lot of times I see 65-year-olds running at a slow pace that's like 3 times faster than my slow pace.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, should I now run fast because it just hurt my ego?
Yeah.
But then I tell myself, okay, I gotta be slow. This is my comfort zone. This is my like zone 2. If I'm doing that, then I should be, not comparing myself.
Just so important to stick to the plan. And how you said that, I say this because I'm a lot into strength as well. There should be no ego running, no ego lifting. Such important things which I have made peace with. How you said that, when I also, run in Central Park, there are times when I'm doing my easy run and then, people will cross. And this is a mistake I've done in the past, where I was running and, there was somebody running with me and we were like going forward back. And then this is like, I think 3-4 years back. And then I was like, okay, like it's time. So like, I was supposed to run at a pace of say 6, but I ended up at 4:30, 4:45 for no reason. So it is important, as you said, that, everyone is on a different journey. We don't have to compare. I think social media has played a role here where, you see somebody running at a certain pace or, doing, say, a half marathon in 1 hour, 30 minutes. And maybe you're finishing in 2:30 and you start questioning, am I even running? Like, don't do that, because we don't know where they've come from. Of course, we need to appreciate the work they're putting in, but it's okay. Like, we don't have to compare. Rather, I see it as a positive where I look at somebody who's faster or, who's running. I'm like, wow, if they can do it, there is a scope. I can do it too. And I think that is my driving factor always. That, even when I was signing for the Ironman, I was like, oh, there's so many people doing it. So many women doing it. I can do it. So I should attempt it.
Right? Important part. What are the most common problems or questions or common issues that women bring up? especially?
Periods. I think that is one thing where, that should we run during our periods? Is it safe to run? It is safe to run. I do it. All the athletes do it. There's no option, right? You have to train your body. So how I tackle this is, so say if somebody who's never exercised before, slowly build up. It's again you have to slowly build up. So say if you've never run before, don't just jump into running. Start walking. Start with 30 minutes, right? Then you can slowly and gradually add. Now, of course, everyone goes through a very different phase. You've got cramps. Some people are not feeling fine. It's okay. If you want to skip it, skip it. But if you slowly and gradually build up, it's safe to run, and you will actually see that things like cramps, all those things are getting better as you go. So again, it might take a while. In terms of running, it's safe to run, but you'll have to slowly and gradually build up. So say if you're not feeling up for a speed session, it's okay. Just do an easy run, right? Now, it totally depends. There are going to be times when even I'm not comfortable doing it. Then I'll probably cut it down or maybe even skip it, but maybe just go for a walk. But if you train your body, you can do it. So people are running. Even I did some events on my day 2, day 3. So you have to slowly and gradually build up and get stronger that side. So that's for women. I think that's one major concern that I get a lot of questions, even on Insta, people will reach out to me that can we do it? So yeah, it is safe to run.
And also, if a woman has never run in her life, never worked out, unfortunately, mostly a lot of girls don't work out when they're younger, and they'll realize this much later in life. What is a good starting point? Is 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer, whatever is good. Just getting moving is a good point to start.
So yeah, even if it's a female or a male, if you want to start, the good starting point is that you go out for walks first. So what I do, there are people who have seen who've never, played sport or never done any kind of workout, then they want to start running. Things like, knee injuries, ankle, they have these questions. So instead of starting running, it's good to walk run. So I'll tell them, let's say you're going for a walk, start with 20 minutes of walking. This is for somebody who's never done any kind of activity and, is trying to change their lifestyle. 20 minutes of walking, right? Now in 20 minutes of walking, what you do is you add, say, 30 minutes of brisk walk, or 30 seconds of brisk walking. So you're doing 30 seconds fast walk, then 30 seconds slow. So this is how you're building your stamina. Now you're able to do 20 minutes, great. Add 25, 30, and now add short burst of running in between. So say you're running in a park, you say, okay, from this tree to that tree, I will just try to jog, slow, then again walk. So your major chunk is going to be walking, but that's how, once you reach 30 minutes, 40 minutes, that's when you can now say, okay, I'm going to try and now run 500 meters in a stretch and 1 kilometer in a stretch. And that's your starting point.
Lovely. Okay, so now I've trained for say 12 weeks. My race is say in the next couple of weeks. So I'm 2 weeks out. A very important last 2 weeks or 10 days or 7 days is called the taper week. What is a taper week? How should I taper? Why is it important?
Yeah. So coming back to, as we discussed about the 3 loading and 1 deload, and then so peak week will be your peak for a half will be say 4 weeks out, 3 weeks out, depending on where you are in your training and your goal. So that should be your maximum. So say your longest run, say if you're doing a 18 before your event, as I said, you don't have to run the entire distance if you're training for the first time. If you're doing an 18, do it 3 weeks prior or 2 weeks prior. And that should be your peak, right? That should be peak both in terms of the longest distance and your volume of the week. So the total number of kilometers you're doing. And then we start tapering. So tapering will be, say, in what we discussed about deload, it will be a longer deload, for example, right? So we start cutting down the intensity and the volume, right? Now, earlier we would actually cut down speed sessions also, but now it's a good idea that you continue doing a bit of speed in your taper as well. So say, let's talk about if you were doing 3 days of running, you continue with 3 days of running. Now, as you said, the taper for a half will be 7 to 10 days. It can be sometimes 7 to 14 days also. So 2 weeks or 10 days of period. So say you've done your longest run for this training block, you were doing an 18 as your longest run, you've done that. Now we cut down on the volume. So say you did 50 kilometers as your peak. So we will come down to now sometimes a 70% reduce. So, you can now come down to doing 30,
20.
yeah, 35, and then you come down more. So closer to the event, of course, is like very less. But like say you, that's also again, you don't have to come down to zero.
Gradually.
It's a gradual decrease that you're doing. So now the longest you did 18. So after this, you have say 2 weeks. So you've got another Sunday before your event. You can do like an easy 8 to 10 kilometers, easy run. So that is the long run that I'm talking about. So 18, say you come down to like a 10 to 12 or a 8 to 10. In terms of the speed, say you did one of the sessions that was like 400 meters intervals that we talk about speed, right? You can maybe do, if you did like 6 of those intervals, you can do like 3 to 4. Or you can come down to a 200 meter interval, but don't give up on speed completely. Do a bit of short burst of speed during your taper as well, right? Now coming to your race week, maybe only 2 runs are enough. You don't have to run like 20 kilometers or, as I said, 18. Like, you're done. Your training is done. Now just cut it down, but keep your body moving. So do a lot of mobility work. You can say, do like a 5K on a Thursday or like, on a Wednesday, assuming your race is on Sunday, which is generally the calendar. And then Monday or Tuesday, you can do again a very short burst of speed. So that's it. So the volume will say, total before your 21K would be like a 10 to 12 of 2 runs. That's more than enough. Sometimes people just want to do 1 run as well. There's a lot about shakeout run as well, which people sometimes they do before the race. So like if Sunday is your race, people will do like a 3.5K shakeout jog. Optional. You can do it or you can go for a walk as well. So that's your taper. Now, race day, coming to the race day, we will talk about a bit of nutrition, what you need to do about carb loading, how you should plan your nutrition. But once you've done that, so, you will be ready for your event. So in terms of taper, you also have to, if you're doing strength, which is a very, very important part, cut down on strength as well. So you don't have to think about that, I'm squat like 50 kgs, taper week, I want to squat 50 kgs. No, come down, just keep the body moving, muscles moving, blood flowing. You don't have to hit your PRs in the gym as well.
Okay. So how I want to do this is I want to talk about training completely, then go to nutrition and then go to gear, right? So we're done with the training part here. Now, in terms of running on race day, what should be my strategy to run during the race?
Yeah. So assuming this is your first half marathon, firstly, congratulations. Yes. So, you have made it to the start line. I think that's, which is a blessing in a lot of ways. So you reach there. Few things, let's come 2 days prior. So as I said that, training is done. You don't have to do anything, different or crazy. Same thing on the race day as well. So we talk a lot about race gear, right? Which we will in details, but don't try anything new on the race day. Most basic thing. Talking from my experience as well. So especially shoes, socks, shorts. Like I will practice my race day gear twice. Like, what shoes, socks, everything. I will not try anything new on the race day. Some people prefer wearing the race t-shirt. Optional if you want to do it, but, just make sure that it's right fit for you. So I did this in TMM Mumbai. It was my, practice race that is Tata Mumbai Marathon. I just thought that, might as well just wear their race t-shirt, which I'd never done before. But I thought it's okay. It's my practice. I do it. I was struggling after 30. I was like, feeling everything because I was not used to that material, not used to the fit. So it's better that you don't try anything new on the race day. So that's your gear. Practice it once, maybe in the longest run or, even another long run and then do it. Even for shoes, sometimes people think that, okay, we've been wearing this model during the entire race training. Now on the race day, you'll wear a new shoe, but the same model. No, it may not suit you. You don't want blisters or, that spoiling your entire experience. So that's one. Second, in terms of nutrition, people talk about carb loading. Now, there's a lot where, do you need to carb load for a half? There are questions about that. But yes, it's a general rule that you should be eating. So say, on a Saturday, you can have like a carb load breakfast. So, it can be like some sandwiches or whatever, you prefer. Afternoon, you can again have like, dal, rice or, whatever you've been training for. Dinner can be pastas, which I used to prefer, but now move to dal rice. So it's a very personal choice. Don't overdo it. Sometimes in carb loading also we think it's carb loading, we just go overboard. That can give you gut issues next day. So again, carb loading should be practiced before your long runs. So say your 18 was the longest, I'm talking here, you must have run 16, 18. Practice what you will be eating before your race day during that. So it's a stimulation or, you need to actually practice everything. So long runs are actually good to practice all that. So your gear, say you want to have pasta for dinner, practice that. before the night. So like, before your longest long run, do everything what you would on the race day. So that's a day before. Hydration is the case. So, you have your electrolytes. Maybe 1 liter is more than enough. It depends from body to body, weather as well. So, you'll have to try that for yourself. Coming on the race day, generally, for me, pre-race day, morning meal will be generally oats with banana. I'll have that like 2 hours prior because it, takes time to digest. But this is all, I've already practiced all this during my whole training, right? I'm not going to wake up and I'm like, okay, today I think I will not have that. I'll have something else. No. Whatever you've done. So like oats with a banana is a good option. Toast with peanut butter. Some people like jam, banana. So you can have that 2 hours prior. And then, once you're at the start point, gels is something that, people take. So you can have like a carb gel 10 minutes before. But all that you need to, again, practice, as I mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. And what about the race strategy? So first 10 kilometers.
Don't start first.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about that.
So race strategy, coming to that, one is that it is a very common mistake that we do. Say you've been running at a pace of 7 in your training. Of course, you can maybe maintain a 6:30, but don't start at 5, which a lot of us make the mistake. That rush, people running faster, we don't understand. We're like starting so fast that after 4-5 kilometers, it's a downer from there. So generally, I break a half marathon in like 8 kilometers, then 16, and then again a 3-kilometer block, and then go all out. So what I mean is that, be a little conservative. That first to 8 kilometers, be a little like, say if you think that you can run at a pace of 7, stay around a 7, 7.5, 7.10. After 8, if you're feeling good, your body will tell you. Maybe you can cut it down 10 seconds. And, go a little faster till 16, see how you're feeling, then you start cutting down. So a negative splits, as we call, is better than positive, where you're like literally going very slow to the end. Try to maintain and conserve your energy till, say, 14 to 16 or 18 kilometers, and then you can then just go all out.
Okay. So to help me understand more, and say if we don't talk about the pace, if we talk about the rate of perceived effort here, when I'm in my first 8 kilometers, what I can try and do is maybe run a little faster than my slower runs that I've been practicing, right? So maybe zone 3, zone 2, is that a good way?
So zones again, see, generally, if you're talking about races, if you're actually racing, you may be in zone 4, zone 5 all throughout. You're pushing your body. Race day is about generally pushing the body. But RPE, the RPEs can be talked about. For first to 8, maybe stay on a RPE of 6.
6. Okay.
Right.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
So, 6 to 6.5, if that is what. And actually, good that you brought this up, because sometimes people get so obsessed with the paces where they might be ready for faster, but we can't, yes, right? Yeah. So it's okay. Like, race day is about experiencing these things. So maybe a 6.5 is fine. Hold yourself till 8. Then you can maybe push it to a 7.5 till like 16, and then, see how your body, let us go all out, right? Mm-hmm. But generally people do it other way, where, they start very, very fast, and then it's very hard to hold that pace also.
Okay. And when I'm running throughout, in what intervals should I take my gels? If available, electrolytes. Sometimes there are bottles of Coke available. I'm like Coca-Cola available. So how does that look like?
So again, coming back to never try anything new. So like, the aid stations, like sometimes there are different drinks available which you've never tried in your training or in your life. Don't do that on that day, because you don't know how it's going to respond. So coming to gels, generally people, take it 30 to 40 minutes, every 30 to 40 minutes. That's, something that people follow. If you have more than that, your body may not be able to digest and you might just throw up. Like sometimes people feel it's a race, like, let's have 20 minutes. That's not going to help, because your body has a capacity, how much it can, absorb in a go. So generally it's a 30 to 40 minutes. But again, you have to train yourself. Don't have a gel if you've never had before. So have it in your training. For some people, it might work 40 to 45 minutes as well. It depends. And also it depends on the consistency and the, gel, how much quantity they have. So 30 to 40 minutes. So I generally, talking about from what I do for my half, and generally a lot of people do it, is we take a gel 5 to 7 or 10 minutes before the race start. That's one. Then if I'm looking at time, or I will generally look at distance. So I'll take the second gel around 6 to 7. Then I'll take about 13 to 14, and then the third gel around say 17 or 18, right? You also need to check if the gel has caffeine or it doesn't have the caffeine, because sometimes the caffeine can actually take the heart rate. So practice those things. So read what the gel has. And if you're having caffeine, maybe one caffeine gel, or it totally depends on how your body responds. There was a time when I raced with 6 caffeine gels, and I was still wonder how I managed. So I did not change. I just kept having all the gels which had caffeine. So I don't know how much caffeine I took that day. But yeah, so that's what even I'm learning, that it's good to mix it up if you want, and then you plan it accordingly.
So like have a caffeinated, then a non-caffeinated, then a caffeinated.
Yeah, like
alternate.
maybe some people prefer in the first half they will have caffeinated, maybe towards the end, but you need to practice that. But know what you're putting in your body, practice that before, so that there's no surprise on the race day. And of course, the aid stations will have different drinks. How much you want to consume depends on yourself. Like some people, they want to sip electrolytes every 10 minutes. They might carry it with them. But yeah, you have to be flexible. Like I generally will take like water every aid station, just have water. If they have electrolytes, have a sip or two and then go on.
Okay, so now hopefully I cross the finish line in a decently good time. And the next thing I want to do is I want to go for a marathon. So we've understood how training works for a half marathon and how nutrition works for a half marathon on the race day or the carb load, the taper week. What changes in the marathon?
Yeah. So first thing is, it's good to know that you said that, you want to change to a marathon, because most of the time, when I did my first half, I was like, this is it. I'm not going to go more than this, and it changes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it is going to happen. Like that is what running is, right? You do a 5, you want to do a 10, 21, and then of course progress to a full marathon. So once you've done that, a good idea to of course take like 7 to 10 days of recovery. Doesn't mean that you're just sitting. You can add movement, go for walks, do cross training, you can do cycling, but you don't have to suddenly again, start training. You need to make sure you're recovering well. Again, nutrition will play a role. So like generally post your event, you can celebrate later, but before that, maybe, have some fruit juices, get your glycogens back, have good carb protein mix and those kind of things. And of course, the week after that will also play a big role. So do that. Of course, no, not a good idea that again, after Sunday, you're Tuesday going for a speed session, slowly build it back again. 7 to 10 days for a half is good. Sometimes people will take 14, listen to your body. Add movement, walking, cross-training, swimming, cycling, and then slowly and gradually start building up for your next race, which you're doing a marathon. Assuming that is in, again, a 12-week period, a good progression. Or even if you've done a good training block for a half, even 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes people do it, but it is case to case. But I will definitely recommend a 12-week progression gap. Also, it's a good idea that, you have a few half marathons under your belt, to progress. It's changing now. People are jumping from, say, half to a full and suddenly an ultra. Maybe not, but everyone's body is different. People are doing well. So, say you've done your first half and now you want to train for a full. So we have 12 weeks. So things will change, from 3 days, would I need to at least go for 4 days of running, because you'll need more mileage, more kilometers in a week, right? You're doing double the distance. So 4 to 5 is a good idea. So you increase 1 or 2 running days, which you were doing 3 days before, right? Now, does this mean that you will increase 2 speed sessions? No. Increase an easy run, maybe add another speed. So that, say now you have 5 days of running with you. So I'll do 3 days of easy runs where I set the conversational pace, slow. Maybe add 2 days of speed, right? Maybe even not 2, maybe even 1 for a beginner. We'll have to see how you're feeling, right? So that's 1. So you keep progressing. Again, the build, as we talked about, the progression of long runs should remain the same, where you're going up 3 weeks and then maybe coming down, or maybe 2 weeks coming down 1 week. And even the mileage will be 10% increase, right? So those foundation things will remain the same. In terms of long run, again, you don't have to do the distance. If you're doing your first marathon, you don't have to run a 42 or a 45 to do the event. As I said, it is for beginner and intermediate. Advanced level athletes will do that, 45. They might do even more, right? But if you are doing, so a good rule will be that your longest run, which should be 3 weeks prior to the event, or even 4 weeks, that's okay. That's a good time for you to do it before the training load starts to reduce. But the longest run can be somewhere between a 34 to a 36 or even a 38. But a 34 to 36 is a good distance for a first timer to do a marathon
That's in the peak week, right?
in the peak week. So the longest run which we did in 18 for you in a half, if you're able to put in like between a 34 to 36 is good for your marathon. And of course, if somebody has that time and can do a 38 as well, but you don't have to do a 42.2 for sure for your first marathon. So you do that, and then again the taper period will start. For a marathon, good is a 3 week. For some people, we actually also keep it 4 weeks depending on the load. So you start reducing the intensity, and the same concepts that we talked about, maybe 70% reduce in the first week in the taper, come down to 50, and then just movements before the event, race day.
And the carb load begins on the night before or
No,
2 nights,
for
3
a
nights?
marathon, it's a good idea to, of course, it's double the distance, like 2.5 days, 3 days is good. But again, don't overdo it. Has to be something that you're used to. But yeah, like, so what generally we say is that, you consume the calories, but say if you were having 2 eggs, if we're talking, in protein, reduce the protein intake and then increase your carb intake there. So like, have more of, say, sweet potatoes, those things, but don't overindulge as well.
You would say have more complex carbs, slow digesting carbs.
So yeah, that's a very good topic that, you brought. So yeah, building up to the marathon, yes, the complex, and after your event, fast. So like, maybe a fruit juice or something that goes faster in your
Also
body.
during the event, right? Also during the race, you want to have fast.
Carb gels and
Right.
those kind of things.
Dextrose, sugar, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes they also say that when you're in the taper and you're doing the carb loading, if your race is on Sunday, you should start carb loading on Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday you reduce it a little bit, and then you keep it a little low, and then on Sunday, of course, you're going all out for the race.
Yeah.
Is that something people do as well?
People do it. That's what it's different for different people. But generally, I would say that you don't really have to reduce. Like, don't go like, again, it's not that you go very high Thursday, Friday, and then come down. You don't do that. You maintain it. So you start, say, Thursday evening, Friday, you can do it, Saturday, full day, you can do it. The night before Saturday, the last meal is going to play a big role. What you're having your dinner on Saturday night. And then, of course, the Sunday morning, that pre-race meal also plays a big role. So you don't have to cut down on those things. That's like, those are the pillars again. No need to cut down, like, even same thing. So for the marathon as well, like you can have your pasta or whatever high carb dinner. Dal rice is one option, which, generally people do in India. And then again, your toast, peanut butter, bread, or oats in the morning. Some people prefer rice cakes as well. So it totally depends on what you want to have.
When you talk about training for a half marathon versus a marathon, what should be my weekly mileage?
Yeah. So weekly mileage is, your total number of kilometers in a week that you're doing. And now for a half marathon, that's your 21.1. Starting would be for a beginner 30 to 35 is a good ballpark. And then, of course, the peak that we talked about, your longest week in terms of training, 50 to 60 is good. This is, we're talking about beginners, intermediate who want to start. Pros will actually go up till pros or people looking for timings will go up till 80, 90 and a half as well. So that's your half marathon. Progressing to a good ballpark again will be weekly of a 50 to 60 is minimum that we should be aiming at. If you can, of course, push it to 60, 65 is good. Peak week can also be 70 to 90 also. Some people do 100 plus as well. That's the peak week. But then again, that's second layer to it. So if you are able to maintain in short, 4 to 5 runs for a full marathon, half 3 to 4 runs is a good, ballpark. If somebody, they don't want to focus on the distance, 1.5 hours of running on, weekdays is a good option. And then, so that's how you gradually build up. But whatever you do, make sure that you're following the 10% to 15% rule so that slowly you're building up.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And also, from my experience, I think what you said is absolutely right, to have a few half marathons under your belt before you go for a marathon. That's more sensible because then you're more, you're more prone to injuries, more susceptible to, Achilles, like I'm facing right now, and sometimes tight calves or pulling a hamstring or something like that. So maybe have a few half marathons.
Yeah, so I think that's something that's happening even with me. Like, I do have these goals where, so I've done in terms of running 50 kilometers, I've done twice. But of course, I am tempted to go the distance and, those things. But it's just so important to sit down and figure out what works good for you. Like, so as you know, we were discussing before that what you should do. Like, if you've done a 10K, should you do a half? I think you need to understand that there are two ways of you to progress in the running journey. One is that people say, okay, I want to do a 10, I've done in 60 minutes, maybe I want to do in 45. So is time, like doing faster your goal, or you want to progress in distance? But even though, like, now we are seeing, like, it's great that there's so much information about doing ultras and all. We are seeing people jumping very fast from, say, doing like a half to a 50 or even 100. But it's a good idea to have a slow progression. Now, talking about this, I am training somebody who's not done a full marathon, but he's going for his 100K, like, in the coming 2 weeks. Now, if you...
Why don't we give him a shout out?
Yeah, so Devik, he's from Jaipur, who is actually going for his 100K. Now, I met him. He told me, ma'am, I've done like a 34, 35. That's my longest. And I was like, 100K, like, how? Like, we have to slowly and gradually build up. He said, let's see. So now, as we talked about in the beginning, that, I looked at his training age, what he's done in the past. Like, he's a strength coach. He comes from a very strong strength background, extremely strong guy. Consistency, discipline, talk about it. He had everything. So I told him, let's first do a 50K. That was my first, discussion with him. He said, let's start and see. So what I did with him was, we did like a 3-4 week period block. I said, I want to give you this load, because running is completely different. Being fit and strength is completely different. 2 different ball games. Let's see how your body responds. So we started with like 3 runs weekly. Then we progressed to 4, 5. And, that's how we progressed. And then his body was responding well to this load, right?
They do well.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay. So of course, like, there are these different, cases where people are actually progressing fast, and maybe their body is able to hold it up. It could be because of their how the body is built and how they are mentally. So then we got a chance where we thought, okay, now let's try. And there was a 55K event. We were not well prepared for it. We took the chance. He did very well. So that's when, we got the confidence. So it can be different for different people, and that's what is happening. So his story is out there. So people are getting inspired. But we need to understand that, everyone is built differently. So general rule of thumb will be that, you follow this progression. So I did a few 10Ks, 21. Then I did my first marathon. Then I did the 50. Maybe I'll do another few marathons then, So that's how I think slowly and gradually build up. It does 2 things. One, you are actually improving as an athlete as well. I'm seeing positive changes in the timings as well. Injury prevention is another thing. And secondly, in the end, your body is taking the load. So you have to maintain and manage those things.
And no, I'm shout out to Devik. And you're a beast. I have been following you on Instagram. And the way you run, the way you look, man, keep going, keep killing it. Good for you. But okay, so we've talked about half marathon, training, nutrition, and taper. And also included marathon, because the base remains the same. Pretty much the basics remain the same. Let's move on to the very exciting part, that is gear. Starting from smartwatches to heart rate monitors to shoes. Go in.
Yeah, so I think this is something very funny, where you get these reels where, people say running is cheap. And then there are these, reels talking about how, like, you spend a lot of money, there's no end to it as well. But yeah, like, say, if you just want to run, if you just want to experience the sport, you just need a good pair of shoes, a good sportswear. And like, you can actually do it without a watch as well. So I did my first half without a watch. Get your phone, you've got these apps. There are many apps free available. You can start your journey there. But of course, if you want to then start investing, there are a lot of things, like, so people will invest in, like, say, different shoes. Shoe rotation is something which we'll talk about. That is also important. Race day shoe is different. So I started with like one pair of shoe, which was like my training shoe for gym. Anything, hiking, anything, like that was one pair. And now, because I'm getting into it, there's no end. Like, you need so many pairs. Like, you're buying it for a tempo session is different, for this different. So it's another thing altogether.
Let's start with shoes.
Yeah. So a lot of questions. Which shoe? I get messages, ma'am, which shoe do I buy? What should I, invest? What should be the budget? So it all comes down to how much you want to invest. That's one. All shoes are good, but it depends. Like, for example, I was wearing a certain shoe, worked out well for me. Somebody else, maybe it wouldn't. So you should go by the feel as well. That's one thing. But it's a good idea to do a bit of shoe rotation, because they say that, say if I've done like a 20K today in one pair of shoe, tomorrow, not the best idea because the cushion and everything may not come back to the original shape. So it's a good idea that you have another pair of shoes if you're doing running all 4 days or 5 days back to back, right? So the shoe rotation is that what we talk about. For that, maybe you have the same pair but maybe 2 pairs, right? How much do you want to run in the shoe will also depend on the type of shoe that you are using. Generally, they say 600 to 800 kilometers or maybe 1,000 kilometers is a good number, but it also depends on your height, weight. A lot of factors will impact that. So maybe somebody might be able to run 700, but some might be able to push it to 800, 900, but the shoe will start showing the changes. So it's a good idea that you start discarding the running shoe if you're actually into it, because it can cause injuries later. So it's a good idea that you keep a track of how much distance you've done in a running shoe.
So when you say it'll start showing changes, that is the cushion will become a little harder.
That, and then you might also start feeling some niggles. You can see on the side the foam might
start compressing.
Yeah, you see the sole as well. You'll see some wear and tear there also.
Okay.
So it will. So yeah, there are people who are running 1,000, 1,200. Great, you can do it. That's what I said. It depends from person to person, but of course, it's a good idea that you keep a note of these things if you want to get into running, as a sport in general. So that's one. Different shoes, all brands are good. Whatever, suits you, try it on. That's a good important thing because what you feel will actually, tell you. So there is a very popular pair of shoe which I thought I saw online people wearing. I ordered. Didn't suit me. After third, fourth run, it didn't work for me, but it is working out for a lot of people.
Nike Pegasus, that what you're talking about?
There is a shoe. so it's, but I wear it for regular race, but maybe for running it didn't work out or whatever. So it is, something very subjective. But yeah, so now I do believe that, shoe rotation doesn't have to be expensive shoes. You can get in entry level shoe as well and then do it. Go by the feel. That's
what shoe do you wear for your runs?
So I do
for a race, say.
For race. So now coming to race day, carbon plate shoes very, very popular. So I do wear carbon plate, especially when I'm racing, looking for faster times. So I'm wearing Vaporfly and Alphafly Nike. That's something that I use for my races. Many other carbon plate shoes are there, but this is what I've been racing for last 2 years. So there's a big question that should we get a carbon plate shoe? Should we not? It is a big investment. It definitely helps you, with the whole getting faster. There's no doubt there. But should you get is a very big question. If you're looking for just finishing and, if you're running at a pace of 7:38, maybe you should stick to your normal shoe because carbon plate can also cause a lot of injuries if it doesn't suit you, which is happening with some people. So you need to again try and see if it works for you or not. But definitely, people are wearing it for the shoe, and generally a carbon plate shoe will be 250 to 300 kilometers. So that's 3-4 marathons and you're done. You should not be wearing it after that.
And you don't train in carbon plated shoes.
So
right?
so you should train, but again, the shoe has very less life. So you will say I will do maybe a 20K run before my marathon, do
practice.
I need to practice. But I'm not going to wear it for my easy runs. It doesn't make sense. Can cause injuries. Plus the shoe, will not work that long. People are wearing carbon plate and going for walks and all. Not the best idea because the foot position, a lot of things changes with the shoe, how it's made. So it can put a lot of pressure on the calf muscles, ankles. So it's not recommended that you're wearing it for leisure. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to smartwatches.
Yeah. So, a lot of brands there. If you just want to say, know your distance and your time, you can just get an entry level watch. Otherwise, of course, there's a lot of brands out there, Garmin, Chorus, Sunto, there are X number of brands, iWatch, Apple Watch. So if you want to get into the metrics and all, it's a good idea that you get a smartwatch. You can get a lot of data your paces, heart rate, your HRV, sleep. Those factors can help you improve your performance. Mm-hmm. And also I find these very, very helpful in designing the program. So we talked about interval sessions. Now, if I have a watch like this, I can make the workout where I can actually set paces. So if I'm going for a run and if I have to do 400 meter interval, which I talked about at a certain pace or speed, I can set it in the watch. So it's easier for me. I don't have to keep looking at the watch. It can beep if I'm going faster or slow. So it actually helps you design the programs better, get more accurate, more specific with your paces as well.
Okay, that's good. So you basically design your workout put it into your watch, and then your watch guides you. That's how you're going to run.
So like some people who would like to do HR based, so it can say that your HR is going up, so it will beep. So you can, like, there are ways. So in terms of if you want to take that next level after you've done your first half marathon, you want to now, like, invest in something, then it's a good idea because you can track a lot of things. Even in terms of distance, like, say even if I'm writing a program, I'm telling somebody that you have to run 2 minutes fast, 1 minute slow. So, you can do it on the watch, a normal watch. Also, you can look stopwatch in the phone, but it's a good idea. If it's here, you can set the whole workout 2 minutes fast, 1 minute slow. So it's happening, and then you can, focus on your run.
Okay, that's the watch. How about heart rate monitors while training? So,
Yeah.
so you wear it as a strap on your chest.
There's now some, you can wear on your
biceps.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's again an add-on. I personally don't use one because I don't train based on HR. But yes, if you want to get into the technical side of it, it's a good investment. So you can wear like a strap HR band, which can get connected to your watch, and you can, track your HR and while you're doing the workout. So that's another. So there are many other, like, people are wearing the smart rings. So if you want to get into
data
and everything, it's good. And if you want to actually analyze your performance, so it's a good idea to invest in these equipment and wearables.
What about running gear, like your clothes, shorts?
Yes. So yeah, I think, like, shorts, the quality and the material plays a big role. Especially I see a lot of people in summer heat wearing like jackets, because there's a thing, you sweat more, you burn more fat. Please don't do that. You can get dehydrated. So especially in peak summer, like I've seen in Central Park, in Jaipur, 40, 41 degrees, sweating like crazy, wearing like full, don't do it. You can use it for warm up for a bit, but you need to give space on the skin for the, sweat. And if you sweat more, you're not going to burn more. That's a myth. So please stop doing that. But yeah, you should be comfortable. You will see, generally shorts, even, women, they ask me, can we run in, long tights and stuff? You can do it, but it's comfortable. So, wear shorts, wear breathable clothes, wear, especially sweat absorption is important. So those kind of things. But yeah, it should be comfortable. And again, something that you are comfortable in, especially on the race day as well, practice in your gear.
Okay, now I know what to wear, how to train, but still I end up getting injured. One of the most important things to remember is what terrain I'm running on. Is it grass, track, the road, treadmill? What's good, what's not good?
So that's another question that, people ask, that if we run on the roads, will we get injured? So if you are to get injured, you can get injured on the mud as well. Like, to be honest, it's all safe to run. How you plan it is, of course, very, very important. If it's uneven, you have to be careful. Like, if you're running in the mud, it's uneven surface, so you have to be cautious. But running on the road is safe. People are doing most of the training there. Grass, but it's a very, very good idea to actually mix it up. So, like, do a few runs. I do that for myself as well, where I'll be running on the mud, like, park where there's mud. A few runs on the road. I do a few track sessions as well. So, like, it's a good idea to mix it up. But everything is safe if you plan it safe. So coming down to injuries can happen. We can't pinpoint one thing, but overall in general, talking about is that very, very fast jump in the mileage. So say if you're running 30 kilometers this week, 60, that's a recipe for injury. That's one. Running every run too fast. So like, as I said that, if you've done a 5K today at 30, you're in 30 minutes. Tomorrow, if you want to do it in 29, that's not a nice idea. So you have to make that mix where you're running slow, adding a bit of speed. But if you're doing everything fast, that can cause a lot of injuries. Not warming up, not doing the cool down, which a lot of us do. We'll just, go get out of the car, start running. Not a good idea. At least do a few drills. Get the body moving, because most of us are generally like, sitting for the longest hours. So it's important that we are waking up the muscles. So do the warm up, do your cool down. That's important. Foam rolling is something that is important. Like, it helps you when we're talking about injury prevention. Then again, in the end, your nutrition, hydration, sleep. So these are all the factors. So in terms of injury, it is safe to run. It's not going to cause impact on the knees, which people talk about. It can, yes, if you're not following these, small things that make a big impact.
Okay. So when say suppose you're doing everything right, but somehow something crops up. Like for example, last week I did my long run, the final long run. It was my peak. After the long run, I had a niggle in my Achilles. For those of you who don't know what Achilles is, it's the tendon connecting your calf to your heels. So somewhere around that region, I found that it was stiff while I was running, and then the next morning again. If somebody has a niggle in their Achilles or their knees or hamstring, what do you suggest they do?
I strongly believe that your body is giving you a signal. Take a break. So how you had it, even everyone will have niggles. That's what I said. That injuries can happen. That's part of the process. But if you're experiencing some pain, some discomfort, stop there and then see what's happening. See a specialist. Go to like a physiotherapist, a doctor, if required. Of course, you don't have to do it the very next day if it's not something very dramatic. Maybe say you've been running 10 kilometers, come down, see if it's happening in the next run, if you're feeling it in the first kilometer only. So there are some injuries that can be, as you said, some niggles that can be settled down as you're going, but then there are some things that need immediate attention, right? So if that happens, my first thing will be that, I will take a couple of days off, see how I'm feeling, go again for a run. If I see that it's happening in the first kilometer again, that's a sign. So I will then definitely seek help. Go to a therapist. It may not be something big, but it's always good to get it checked by somebody who is in the industry, who knows what they're doing, and not go on the Google, which I personally do myself as well. This happened with me recently. I had some niggle. I just went on
ChatGPT or
found out, and then I was so stressed out. And I was like, okay, this is over. And then when I went, it was some tightness in the muscle.
Yeah.
So it is important to reach out. And of course, I think it's important to also be aware of your body. So, be aware of the sensations. Pushing through pain, which is a thing that, no pain, no gain, is not always the best thing to do. Take a step back. It's okay. You can take a step back. Even if you have to rest for 4-5 days a week, it's fine. You can again get back. But it's important to cut the load and see what's causing the issue.
Okay. One more very important topic that I think is something we should discuss. So we've talked about injury prevention. The next thing is recovery. So during my training block, what are some good recovery measures after say a long run? My body is sore, my legs are sore. What do I do? Say 3 or 4 things that I should do.
So one is, of course, as we talked about, sleep. That's one. Focus on your sleep recovery, nutrition. So say you finish your long run, training run, try to eat like a mix of carbs and protein. Say 30-45 minutes is a good window. So have a good meal that day. Focus on your hydration. That's one. Massages is a good, get a massage next day is a good option. Sports massage, just to, get your body released. Foam rolling is something you can do in the evening. A little bit of light stretches, but you don't have to stretch a lot. You can do a bit of light stretches, that's good, but you don't have to do a long session in the evening. Let your body go through the whole process of how it feels after a long run. So these are some basics that you can do as you go. Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of people talk about putting your feet in Epsom salt and hot water, then cold plunges. Do they help as well?
Not so much. I think there was a discussion last time also we came in. So it will help, but you don't necessarily have to do it the next day every time. I was having a discussion with my strength coach, and he said that if you have back-to-back races, it can help you. And of course, if you feel good, if you like it, go for it. But do you have to do it just after your race or after your long run? Not a good idea. Let your body go through the whole process.
You're talking about cold plunge here or hot?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't have to do it. You finish a run, let the body go through the whole process of the inflammation, everything. That's when you are actually improving, training, right? Yeah. And in terms of, so I was having a discussion where should I add it to my routine or not? So he said, if it feels good, go ahead. But if you ask me, maybe not a good idea. Yeah. Let your body heal itself and go through the whole process. If you have say back-to-back races, maybe you can add one in between. But if you have good time to recover between your races, just go with the whole process.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I think we've covered everything from nutrition to training to how to start if you're a beginner. But I think if you're a beginner or a pro athlete, one thing stays the same is apart from training your body, you also need to train your mind. Tell me about, and this is going to be the last section with what we talk about before we give you some bonus in the end. Is how do you train your mind
set.
for a longer run? If I'm somebody who's never run in my life, it is hard for me to imagine that running for 21, 42 kilometers, right? Ultras 50, 100, that seems undoable.
So, as you said, that mindset is such an important thing. So, first thing is to actually believe you can do it. As I said, that I look at people doing it, I feel that if they can, even I can. So that's one thing. It is all possible. It starts from that strong belief that you can. But yeah, it can be challenging, intimidating. That wow, I have to run 42 kilometers. So generally, a good idea, of course, is the training, because you will be training. So hopefully you do those progressions we talked about, that you have done a 36, 34. Race day is different. Like, it is another level altogether. The energy, people around can make such a big difference. So definitely it's going to be something that'll add on. But in terms of personally, it's a good idea that you break it. So like, if I am going for say a long run, say a 25 kilometer, I will break it into, okay, let me focus on the first 8. Now I'll focus on the next. Now I focus on the next. I generally also don't listen to music that much when I'm running these days. So you are spending a lot of time with yourself, your thoughts. So you have to kind of focus, get that back. Also, sometimes, when you're thinking way too much, you can also focus on your breathing. So when you're running, like, try to focus on your breathing, focus on, your steps. So, make it into short intervals of say 8, 12, those kind of, breaks in your distance. That's one. Visualization is something that, of course, everyone talks about, all the pro athletes. It works. Like, you have to visualize yourself, crossing the finish line, being there on the race day. Those things will definitely make a big picture. But I think the one thing is that, believe, if people are doing it, you can do it. And it has happened. Like, I started with a 5K. Never thought I'll do a 50. So
when I was a kid in school, I used to hate running. I was always in sports, cricket, and then basketball big time. We met during basketball matches as well. And still, I never used to like running. And then there came a point in my life where, after a lot of strength training in my life, I said, okay, you know what? Everybody's running. Why don't I try it? So I ran for 2 kilometers, and then I ran for 3, and then I ran 3 for a long time. Then I ran for 5, and then there was a time I decided, okay, I'm going to run 150 kilometers in a month. So I wanted to do like 5 kilometers every day. I ended up finishing that in 16, 18 days. Right?
amazing. Yeah.
So that built on itself. Then 6 kilometers became easy. Then 10 kilometers became easy. And it just, what we need to focus on sometimes, is my experience, is that we need to focus on that one rep of 5 kilometers, one rep of 1 kilometer. Just do it in that moment. And once you do that, your brain chemistry, your brain structure also changes. Something called neuroplasticity that is talked about a lot, is that when you do something that your body is not used to doing, then the neurons that are connected, they create a path. And then when you do that more often, that path becomes strengthened, right? The network becomes strengthened, and then your body can automatically do it. For example, I am able to lift this pen up easily and move it like this. So this, because there is a path that has been, physically constructed in my brain. The neurons are connected in a certain way. Now, if I want to write with the left hand, I won't be able to write in the first go, right? But if I practice, the physical structure of my brain is going to change.
Yeah.
And that's why I say neuroplasticity. It's like plastic. So it's the same way in running and everything in life, I believe.
Like, if you pick up any new activity, like, strength training, anything in that matter, it is going to be challenging. And that's the whole idea and the fun part. Like, how you said that 3K you were doing, and then 5. And then imagine, like, you do a 5, and like, okay, that was a different level of confidence. And that's the fun. Like, don't think about doing a full marathon, break it. Okay, wow, today I've come for a 24. Let me focus on that. So as you do it, so the threshold of your mind and your body will actually lift up. So like, do a 24, maybe once you've done that twice, thrice, then of course it is challenging, I'm not saying, but mentally and physically, you can do the 24. So that is the funny part where, people think that, okay, so generally they talk about hitting the wall. So like, 36, 30 generally is that way, in a marathon, of course, because of the nutrition area as well, and training, generally people start seeing like a dip in the speed sometimes. This happened with me this time in my Frankfurt marathon as well, where, you know, I could hold the pace till 36 and then I could see that it's dropping. So you do it, all that will happen. But in the end, if you are training, if you are like, you know, doing consistent work, you will see that you get 5K, which was a challenge before, is like now not at all. Right. And that is what training does. That is what consistency, and that's what how beautiful the mind and body is. That if you are just putting one layer and step, that's how you can build up rather than just jumping. So like when I did the 50K this time, I wasn't like, you know, it wasn't my A race. I wasn't prepared. It was after my marathon. And, you know, I wanted a challenge. I went for it and I was like, okay, I've done 42, 8 more. Like, you know, in my head, I was telling that to myself. So in the end, like, you know, then you cross that hurdle of 10 ho gaya, 20 ho gaya, okay, now 30. Some people try to do a reverse thing as well, where if they're running like a 42, once they reach a 32, they're like, okay, now only 10 to go. Like, you know, so it's like you can play around with your mind, but you have to, you know, find these strategies to handle. If you're at 1 kilometer, you're thinking about 42, that's not going to work. So as we discussed about pacing, where you break it, so you break it into 8 segments, 16, and then so forth. For a marathon, maybe I'll break it into, okay, first 20, I'm going to run at a certain pace. Then I'll change it to this pace, you know. So there is something or the other that's happening.
Yeah, I believe that apart from crossing finish lines, having paces in mind, breaking speed barriers, there's a lot to do about running with your mental health and the way you feel, the mood that you have while you're running. It just is life changing. Yeah.
It's something that you have to experience. That is what it is like. And there's a lot goes into it. Like, you know, that's what we were talking about, that, you know, once you achieve the goal, what next? Like, you know, there's a purpose that we talk about, that, you know, every day you're waking up, long runs. Like, I personally don't like waking up very early, but like, you know, changing that, waking up at 3:34, weekends are like, you know, all packed. So there is like something you're looking forward to, gives you a direction, discipline. You like, you know, you have a structure. I think that is so important in life in general. So that keeps you going, and that's the motivation.
I think life is a journey and it helps when you can run. So
Yeah.
Shivangi, thank you. I say Coach Shivangi, thank you for talking to us about this beautiful, beautiful sport. And I hope these guys now have a marathon prep plan
I hope so.
for free for everybody, if you're a beginner to an intermediate, you know. And of course, if you want to know more about running, you can find Coach Shivangi. Her handle on Instagram is Fitness Trail.
Yes.
And she's a reservoir of knowledge in this field. And I hope let's start running.
Yeah, thank you. I had a good time. I think it's something that, you know, I love to talk about. So thank you for having me back. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the bonus section that I promised. Shivangi, if we can talk about this very briefly, what are some of the most common race day disasters and how to avoid them?
So one is starting too fast. Just don't get carried away with the crowd. Stick to your pace, stick to your strategy. You know what you've done. So just don't change the plan in the last minute. Don't try anything new, as we discussed earlier as well, that no new shows. Practice whatever you want to on the race day. It's very, very important. And in terms of nutrition as well, there are a lot of stuff lying on the aid station. If you've not tried it before, maybe carry with you, but don't try anything new on the race day in terms of nutrition as well.
Okay. And how about weather conditions? If it is warm, if it is during the Indian winters, in North India, say 10, 12 degrees, or if it is monsoon, how does training change or race day strategy change?
So, I mean, you have to be very, very sure of your, race event that you're going for. Make sure you do a bit of research. You read about like, for example, I went for a race. I didn't know it has a lot of uphill, downhill. That's a mistake. You need to know your course. You need to read about it. It's all available on the website, or, you know, the race organizers will share with you. So know about that. It will change a lot. So say if you've been training in cold conditions and you're going to a hotter, maybe you'll have to change your race day strategy, pace a little bit. Go a couple of days prior if you're going to a different city. Get used to the, you know, weather conditions, but be open to changing the race day strategy. So I'll give an example where I was training in this heat, April to June, July in Jaipur. Went to Frankfurt, cold, windy. didn't know what to do. I had to, of course, change my plan a little bit. It will affect you. So make sure that you're well versed and you know where you're going.
Also, higher altitude and lower altitudes. If you're going to race in Ladakh, for example.
Definitely. So Ladakh, as the Ladakh Marathon is the most something
Popular,
very popular
yeah.
right now. Everybody wants to. So they do have their you have to reach like for a half. I think 7 to 10 days prior, for a full even like 2 weeks. So they have those restrictions that you have to follow, because it will make a big difference. Especially a place like Ladakh, you will need a lot of time.
Acclimatization.
Yeah. So like if people are doing 72 or a 122, I think they need to reach 2 to 3 weeks prior. So I'm not very well versed as of now with the number of days, but you have to reach a few days prior. You cannot go a day before and race in such conditions.
Okay. And what is one, if you were to say, okay, this is one golden rule that I never break for a training block or a race day strategy, what would that be?
Consistency.
Okay, awesome. Be consistent. Well, thank you so much.